There was once a young man named Aarav, who lived in a city that never paused, always noisy, always demanding. Like many others, he woke up to the sound of alarms, scrolled through endless messages, and rushed through life with barely a breath in between. He had a high-paying job, a stylish apartment, and a busy social life. But beneath it all, he felt like something was missing. He was constantly restless, easily irritated, and never truly content. Peace for him was a luxury, something for monks or people on vacation. One evening, after a particularly overwhelming day, Aarav found himself walking aimlessly through an old neighborhood. There, tucked between buildings and traffic, was a small garden, quiet, almost forgotten. Under an old banyan tree sat an elderly man, eyes closed, face calm. He looked untouched by the world around him. Aarav paused, watching. Minutes passed, and the man didn't move, didn't fidget. He simply breathed. Curious and desperate, Aarav approached him. "Sir," he said softly, "you look so peaceful. How do you manage that in a world like this?" The man slowly opened his eyes and smiled. "I've learned to live from the inside out, not the outside in," he replied. "What you're looking at is the power of a peaceful mind." That phrase struck Aarav like a chord that had long been silent. The power of a peaceful mind. He had never thought of peace as power before. To him, power had always meant control, achievement, dominance. But this man radiated something stronger than any CEO he'd ever met. Intrigued, Aarav sat down beside him and asked if he could come back and talk again. The man introduced himself as Kabir. He had once lived a life similar to Aarav's, stressful, fast-paced, externally successful, but internally hollow. His transformation began after a series of personal losses. He left his job, traveled for months, and spent time with spiritual teachers. What he discovered wasn't some mystical magic. It was silence, presence, and awareness. He learned that real strength isn't in reaction, but in stillness. The power of a peaceful mind, he said, could change not only how you feel, but how you live. Aarav began visiting Kabir regularly. At first, he struggled, sitting in silence, felt uncomfortable. His thoughts were chaotic, loud and relentless, but Kabir guided him gently. Start small, breathe consciously, observe without judging. Aarav began waking up early to meditate, limited his screen time, and paid attention to his inner dialogue. Over weeks and then months, a shift occurred. He found moments of calm in the middle of chaos. He started enjoying simple things again. The smell of tea, the sound of rain, the laughter of a child. He became less reactive, more grounded. When work was stressful, he didn't let it steal his peace. When people were rude, he didn't take it personally. He discovered that the greatest freedom is the ability to choose your response. That was the power of a peaceful mind. His friends began to notice. One of them joked, "Did you join a cult or something? You're way too calm lately." Aarav just smiled. He had stopped trying to control everything, and instead focused on mastering himself. His career improved, not because he worked harder, but because he worked with clarity. His relationships deepened, because he listened more and judged less. Peace became his new foundation, not his escape. One day, Aarav came across a young woman, sitting in the same garden where he first met Kabir. She was crying quietly. He sat down beside her and waited. When she looked up, he simply said, "I used to feel like the whole world was too much. Then someone helped me see that I was just too disconnected from myself." She asked him how he changed. He told her about Kabir, about stillness, about learning to sit with his own thoughts instead of running from them. He told her that a peaceful mind isn't something you wait for when life calms down. It's something you create in the middle of the storm. He said, "Once you taste the power of a peaceful mind, you'll never chase the wrong things again." In time, Aarav became known for his quiet strength. People came to him for advice, not because he had all the answers, but because he had the presence. He wasn't immune to setbacks. He still faced challenges, but nothing shook him the way it used to. He had built a life from the inside out. Years later, the garden had become a place where many came to reflect and reset. Kabir had passed on, but his wisdom lived in Aarav and others like him. Aarav now sat under that banyan tree, not as a student, but as someone who had lived the lesson. Eyes closed, breath steady, heart open, not because life was perfect, but because his mind was at peace. And that made all the difference. In a world obsessed with speed and noise, Aarav had discovered something timeless. The power of a peaceful mind wasn't just a poetic idea. It was a real force, one that shaped choices, deepened relationships, and gave meaning to each moment. It wasn't about avoiding life, but about meeting it fully, with calm clarity and courage. That power didn't require money, status, or recognition. It required presence. And once you experienced it, you understood that peace wasn't the absence of problems. It was the presence of strength, and that strength changed everything.